everyone, it's Katie with Rosie Reads, and we're so excited because it's Halloween week! Yay! We love Halloween, and we can't wait to share our STEM spin on the holiday with you this week. And we'll be doing all kinds of fun things that relate science and Halloween. And along that line, our book this week is Fairy Science, Solid, Liquid, Gassy. We're exploring the states of matter this week. And this book is by Ashley Spires, and she's the illustrator and the author, which is awesome. So she wrote the words and did the pictures. So that's pretty talented if you ask me. Now, as we always do in Rosie Reads, there's a couple of things I want you to do while we're reading today. The first thing I want you to think about is why Esther is different from the other fairies. And the second thing I want you to think about is what the steps are that she and her friends use when they use the scientific method, because that's what we use in STEM all the time. So I want you to be able to tell me and your parents and your brother and your sister all those steps by the time we're done reading the book. And then the third big question to think about while we're reading this week is what happened to the pond in the book. And it's a mystery we're going to figure out together. So let's get started and read Fairy Science, Solid, Liquid, Gassy. Esther does not believe in magic, which is kind of a big deal when you are a fairy. How does Jack Frost make snow? Magic. Those are the other fairies talking. While the other fairies wish on stars, Esther conducts experiments. While they learn spells, she studies the law of density. She's a fairy who prefers a microscope to a wand. Esther is dedicated to science. She and her friends use the scientific method to explore the world around them. First, they ask a question. What happens to ice when it warms up? Then they do some research. Don't lick it, the birdie says about the ice. They each make a hypothesis, which is an educated guess based on that research they did. This fairy says the ice will change color. Esther says it will turn into liquid, and their friend says it will become a raspberry. They do experiments and they examine their results. Finally, they draw their conclusions. When ice warms up, it turns into a liquid, water. Uh-oh, I think mine peed. He's funny, huh? Oh boy, says the bird. Esther and her friends try to share their discovery at school, but none of their fairy mates are interested. So, as you can clearly see, Esther says, the rising temperature causes the water to change from solid to liquid, which is the real reason the ice melts. They are too busy planning for the magic fair to listen to her silly logical theories. Now, Esther, we all know that moon sneezes are what make the ice disappear each spring, says her teacher. Last year's fair didn't go well for Esther. It turns out magic enthusiasts are surprisingly clueless. Who has ever heard of molecules? Esther, you have such an imagination. While her fairy mates work on their magic projects, Esther focuses on solving scientific problems. How does the compass needle always point north? Last one in the pond is a rotten toadstool, say her friends, and there is no bigger problem. Sploot! Then a missing pond! I have mud in my ears. I have mud up my nose. I have mud in all the places. Eat. There are lots of ideas about what happened to the pond. An ogre drank it. It went down the drain. It fell in love with a mole and moved underground. It went for a stroll in the woods and got lost. But only Esther and her science pals observe the facts. Maybe it flew away? Says Esther. Fig asks a question. Where did the pond go? Clover does some research. This has been the hottest spring in years. Esther forms a hypothesis. We know water is a solid when it's very cold, and it turns to a liquid when it warms up. Together, they conduct experiments and examine the results. At last, they draw their conclusion. "The pond is up there," says Esther. It did fly away. It didn't fly exactly. When the sun heats up the water, it turns into gas and floats upward to the clouds. The pond will be back when it rains. It's called evaporation. Since there is no scientific way to force it to rain, Esther and her friends just have to wait to see if her theory is correct. I've noticed that science seems to involve a lot of waiting, and sometimes it really does. Come here, Pondy Pond. They wait and wait and wait a little longer until finally it starts to pour. Eureka! They were right! After a few days of steady rain, the pond is restored. And then another fairy who isn't so into science says, "My potion worked!" It's amazing that water can change states like that. No wonder some fairies think it's magic. The water cycle is almost magical. And it gives Esther the perfect way to bring science to the magic fair. I'm solid, I'm liquid, I'm gassy. The almost magical water cycle. Star, not actually magic, science. Did it work? Here are her friends. What type of spell makes the water change? Water is a shapeshifter? Does water make everyone gassy? Has Esther finally made everyone excited about science? The winner of this year's Magic Fair is... Blossom Dinglepuff for her report. Glitter boogers make her snot sparkle. Apparently, the Magic Fair isn't ready for science, but the judges appreciate a good costume. Esther, Clover, and Fig get first place for Best Magic Fair Costume Design. Esther may not have won any trophies, but like all good scientists, she knows that discovery is the best reward. And there is always something new to discover. The end. So, how is Esther different from the other fairies? She's different because she believes in science and she wants to conduct experiments and make hypotheses and figure things out the scientific way. And sometimes science can seem like magic, like when the pond disappears. And that's what's really cool about it. There's so many things to explore and so many things to learn about science that we want you all to jump in and be like Esther and try to figure things out. Now, the thing Esther and her friends use to figure out the question about the missing pond is called the scientific method. And there's 2 points in the book where she talks about the exact steps you take when you're investigating something using the scientific method. So, the first thing you do is you ask a question. And then you do some research. So find out what background knowledge already exists about your question. And once you have your research ready to go, you make a hypothesis. An hypothesis is an educated guess. So it's an idea that you make based on the research that you've done. Then you run experiments and you examine your results and you come to a conclusion. And Esther and her friends come to the conclusion that what happens to the pond? Right, it evaporated. It changed its physical state. The water changed from a liquid to a gas, and they figured that out using the scientific method. So this week, for the Rosie Reads activity, and we do one every week when we read a book, we want you to think about something you want to figure out using the scientific method, a question you want to ask, a problem you want to find the answer to, and make it Halloweeny because, hey, it's Halloween week and we all need to celebrate and embrace that because it's just a really fun holiday, right? So I can think of a Halloween one that kind of plagues our household a little bit that maybe my kids and I can try to figure out this week. And that is, why do pumpkins start to rot when you carve them? If you carve them too early, they aren't around for Halloween, and that's what's happened to our pumpkins. So I'm wondering how we would use the scientific method to figure that out and maybe figure out a way to stop that process from happening or slow it down a bit so our pumpkins will last. So tell us what Halloween questions you want to investigate using the scientific method in the comments. And we'll see you on Friday for Rosie Makes, when we make all kinds of really fun Halloween decorations using the scientific method and exploring solids, liquids, and gases. Thanks guys, we'll see you later this week. Happy Halloween!